our next speaker is Maya Groff. She's come all the way from Netherlands. She's a convener of Climate Governance Mission. She's an international lawyer based in The Hague who is assisted in developing in servicing of the multilateral treaties, also working at various international criminal tribunals and teaching at The Hague Academy of International Law. It's an impressive CV. I'm not going to read all of it, but we have sent it to you. Please read through it later. Come, Maya. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction and indeed for this invitation to be with you today. And just hearing about your organization and your work, already I feel we're very, very values aligned from what we're doing at the Commission and our collaborators and partners. So it's absolutely wonderful to make this connection. So I've been asked today to share a few comments, insights from COP28. So I'll be sharing some of my thoughts based on this vantage point of the Climate Governance Commission. And as was mentioned, my primary vantage point is as an international lawyer. I'm based in The Hague, Netherlands, but from Canada originally, and I've been working across the world in every region with judges, academics, lawyers, civil society, companies on the development of multilateral treaties, on cutting-edge international institutions. So I come at this also with a sense of a great deal of hope and capacity of the international community to rise to these very formidable challenges, as Dominique was explaining very well in terms of this scientific reality that we're now confronting. So next slide, please. Yes, thank you so much. Got it. So, reflections on COP. Again, my background in treaty negotiations, these sort of multilateral treaty processes, they can work very well, especially when you have time. When time is on your side, I've worked on many treaties and international agreements, multilateral processes where, you know, the whole world, countries of the world are involved. If you have decades or even centuries, these treaty processes can work very well for you. Eventually, over time, you'll get buy-in, you'll sharpen your different action points, but we don't have time, unfortunately, in terms of the climate crisis. So our perspective on the Climate Governance Commission is the Paris Agreement, the negotiations ongoing are absolutely necessary, but they won't be sufficient. So what have we seen thus far at COP28? Just a few highlights here, which many of them are very important, but many of them also show some of the bottlenecks that the international community is facing and where we need to make really strong progress, but we're not yet there. So loss and damage fund, as was mentioned, there's already some contributions, but what is needed in fact is hundreds of billions per year. So you can see this is still a drop in the bucket. However, there's also some good news. Generally, the whole finance piece for various aspects of climate action, there are new commitments, that's fantastic. Dominique was mentioning concrete and cement as a very high-emitting sector. We have a great uniting effort of some of the largest concrete and cement companies, which if they follow through, that will be a tremendous step forward for the world. And again, this is around the margins of these interstate multilateral negotiations. US-China, very important steps forward, and a number of outcome statements or declarations on urbanization. Cities, of course, are responsible for about 70% of global emissions. This is very important. As well as novel new declarations, climate and health sector, also substantial emissions that are under-recognized, and then oil and gas decarbonization charter, which it looks very impressive, but of course this is only about emissions in terms of operations and not in terms of the actual consequences of removal of fossil fuel and then using that energy in the world. So indeed, this is a huge red flag in terms of our global progress and the work that we really need to do to accelerate the energy transition to clean energy and across all the various sectors. Global stocktake is still in progress about countries' sort of commitments or national determined contributions, as they're called. But the UNEP released a report just in advance of COP. We are currently on track for limited temperature rise to 2.9 degrees centigrade, which is catastrophic. And scientists also say that 1.5 degrees is not safe. We can no longer say that that is even safe. So we have a lot of work to do very quickly. A few other points, there's also lack of gender balance in terms of the international leadership. 2023, officially the hottest year in human history. And there was a new scientific report warning that we're on the brink of a number of catastrophic tipping points in our planetary Earth system. So the vantage point of the Climate Governance Commission that I have been leading for the last several years is that we need this absolutely rapid, transformative global action of our international economy on a speed and scale that has no historic precedent. So we're very much living in interesting times, and I very much agree with Dominique that it also involves tremendous economic opportunities, tremendous opportunities also for social well-being. But this is, on the level of sort of an effort, analogous to World War II, or funding needed, Marshall Plan, or larger after World War II. And it's not just climate change. We have interdependent areas, biodiversity, pollution. So at the Climate Governance Commission, we're aiming to make proposals that the international community can really rise to the challenge of this new reality in the Anthropocene. So I wanted to also, familiarize everyone and share with everyone the planetary boundaries framework, which was proposed by scientists in 2009 as another governance tool that indeed businesses are now using. How can their operations be aligned with staying within these planetary boundaries? There are 9 of them. Climate is one, and you can see the red on this slide where we've overstepped already 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries. And just to note also that even if we try to push down on climate change, quite a number of the other boundaries are so interlinked with climate that we actually have to have governance at the same time of all of these, or most of these boundaries, if we're going to meet our climate targets. So we need a new planetary boundary governance approach at the international level and at all levels of governance. And so our commission, just to introduce our high-level commissioners, we've been in phase 2 of the commission, bringing in former heads of state. We have Mary Robinson, who you see in this photo, former president of Ireland, and current chair of the Elders. And you may know the Elders. It was founded by Nelson Mandela to bring statespersonship with an ethical, transformative vision, as Nelson Mandela demonstrated in South Africa. We have a few other former heads of state on the commission from the Elders, like Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia, Ernesto Zedillo of Mexico, Maria Fernanda Espinosa, who is former president of the UN General Assembly, and Johan Rockström is our scientific co-chair, who's one of the leading planetary Earth system scientists. So we're trying to really work with these high-level commissioners to provide thought leadership, really, for where we need to go as an international community. So we just released a new report on November 28th, which we can share and distribute the link with you for a soft copy. But in the report, we're proposing 10 near-term, very urgent sort of governance improvements or levers that the international community might consider, and then 5 longer-term or medium-term, maybe on a 3 to 5 year horizon. And I'll just give you a sample of a few of the 10 near-term proposals. 1, urgently improve the climate COPs to focus on delivery, action, and accountability. So the COPs have become, unwieldy. There was intentionally left out strong accountability mechanisms in the Paris Agreement in 2015, even though it is indeed legally binding. So we have a step forward to hold countries and other actors to account. And also, how can we reorganize the way that states work to be much more focused really on the delivery, having multi-stakeholder coalitions, including progressive business, civil society, et cetera. Because the science is so grave, we're going to be working with Maria Fernanda Espinosa and others to request that the General Assembly declare a planetary state of emergency, because this is in fact the scientific reality, and also suggest convening of an emergency platform for planetary emergency, which the Secretary General has proposed already for climate crisis and shocks. But we are already in climate crisis in the world at a planetary level. And also we have catalyzed business as a force for good, connect trade and investment law, et cetera. So we're really trying to make proposals to accelerate our collective action across the spectrum of actors and different venues that are really key for climate governance. Our medium-term proposals, I'm very excited about. I'm also very excited working with the next generation on these, who hopefully should have an open mind about how do we create the next generation international environmental governance architecture, so we will never be in a situation of running these risks again. A global environment agency, for example, was proposed already in 2009 by Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy, two heads of state. Because our environmental governance is so fragmented, so slow, we really need to enhance our capacity, as well as various other proposals you see here. So just a little bit also in terms of our theory of change. You know, a lot of these big macro governance reforms sound good. They would be helpful for the international community, but it seems remote, very slow in terms of these institutional transformations. But so-called smart coalitions have been very, very powerful in the past, with global civil society groups working with like-minded states to catalyze major international transformations. For example, the foundation of the International Criminal Court, the Marshall Islands, a tiny state, was instrumental in making sure the Paris Agreement in 2015 had the highest level of ambition possible. So there are proven methods to really make these international governance transformation. Also norm entrepreneurship, thought leadership of our former heads of state and others, business leaders, very, very important. What is the positive vision for humanity that we need now in this transition point? And education, communication. We have amazing education partners around the world working with ministers of education. So it's a whole of system approach where we really need this mindset shift. We need it in the business leadership. We also need it at the governance level to really be ambitious, to be transformative, to remove the psychological barriers to the next generation governance we need. So we'll be working at the Summit of the Future in New York at the UN, other various venues, Bretton Woods institutions. We're going to have expert diplomatic high-level working groups to develop the proposals further. And we're establishing a smart coalition, mobilizing an Earth Governance Alliance with stakeholders. It'll be civil society, youth around the world, but also business. We're going to be working very, very closely with progressive businesses. One of our collaborators is the Exponential Roadmap Initiative in Sweden. They have a $1 trillion corporate ecosystem, and they managed, before the Swedish elections, last elections, to mobilize companies representing 20% of Swedish GDP to advocate for strong, sound climate policy across the political spectrum. So we think there's much, much more scope for business really raising this voice to protect future generations, to protect, really safeguard humanity at this time. So to summarize, we're really looking at the macro governance level. How do we connect the international to the local, to the regional, to have sound planetary governance for the emergency, and also take this holistic Earth system governance approach, which is really based on this next generation science, which is very important for business people, youth, activists, everybody to really educate themselves on. We have actually a fragile Earth system that we've caused to be out of balance, and we need to actually take these proactive measures to really care for it together. So it's exciting work, and we look forward to collaborating with many of you going forward. And I'll just mention, you'll see one of our key collaborators from the beginning is CEW in New Delhi, which is one of your partners also, as well as our various other partners all around the world. So thank you so much, and thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Okay. So my question is that we are on track to 2.9 degrees Celsius. And our target was 1.5 degrees Celsius. And we have only 7 years to meet the target carbon budget. I'm assuming that we will be able to meet the target, although I'm very skeptical that we will. My question to you right now is that our glaciers are melting very fast, causing floods and water crisis and creating lots of refugees. Probably you have heard of the ghost villages in Uttaranchal. A lot of villages are empty today. So with 1.5 degrees Celsius, what would happen to the glaciers and in the Arctic, and what does it mean to South Asia in general? We have 1/3 population is already in Pakistan. Our refugees, climate refugees, 1/3 of population, right? What would happen? And are we discussing this Himalayan glaciers that is melting at a rate, water crisis, temperature, the feedback loop, the temperature, at this wet bulb temperature effect that would happen to this country by the time frame? Are we considering that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So what I would say about the various potential effects of the different consequences of the planetary warming that's already occurred, these are often nonlinear effects, and because it's one integrated whole climate or Earth system, sometimes scientists don't know, or they don't know with great accuracy, the consequences. But of course, the science has improved, and it's improving incredibly. And I think Dominique's point about, we developed, as humanity, developed vaccines in a record speed time. So we need to keep monitoring and looking at the best available current science to sort of forecast, diagnose what the cascading effects will be, and there'll be multiple effects, of course, at localities, but also globally. We have big biophysical systems around the world, like the Amazon, like glaciers in the Arctic and Antarctic that affect the whole planet. The permafrost, in northern areas, where if it, starts to thaw further and release methane, et cetera, very dangerous for the whole Earth system. So the IPCC reports are excellent, authoritative, but that science is even, a little bit dated even after their last report, because we're not used to thinking in this urgency, real-time scientific reporting. So I would refer you to sources like the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research, which has excellent resources, and there are many other, independent scientific organizations and institutes that are really giving state-of-the-art sort of diagnoses. So, and just one point also about that, the more we know scientifically, like the IPCC in its progression of reports, it keeps putting the safe temperature rise for humanity lower and lower in terms of the risks we're running. And even that, 6 or 7 years now for our remaining carbon budget, that was just recently, adjusted down. And that's only to have a 50% chance of staying at the 1.5 degree target. And so most likely scenarios, unfortunately at the moment, is that we'll overshoot, and there's different scenarios based on different factors, we'll overshoot the 1.5 degree target by 2035, for example, and then we'll have to draw down by the end of the century. So again, from the sort of international legal perspective, we're going to need institutions that manage this kind of global effort to draw down also to safe and monitor safe temperature limit, but also manage the effects on various populations. How do we have orderly migration or resettlement? As Dominique was mentioning, this fascinating proposal of resettlement in parts of Africa, which is really fascinating. How do we do this in a peaceful, just, respectful way where all people are treated with dignity, in accordance with our Universal Declaration of Human Rights, et cetera. So the science is fascinating. It's very, it's very scary, very worrying, but it's also, we do have increasingly, excellent tools to monitor, more or less in real time, and that knowledge is always being refined and progressed as we speak.